Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Tone Talk with Mark Uzansky and Dave Friedman. It's episode 101. We're back with another guest, and psyched to have Dweezil Zappa with us. How's it
Hi
going, Dweezil?
guys, pretty good. I'm playing air traffic controller with these big headphones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just learning the semaphore. It's. I think I've got it. There's no accidents
Awesome.
happening.
Killer.
Well, there can always be one. We'll
Yeah.
see.
Well, let's hope not. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. Hope everybody's doing good. Everybody in the chat, let us know if you can hear us and how the audio's doing. Make sure everything's going well. So thanks for joining us, Dweezil.
Thanks for having
Looking
me.
forward to having you on. I think you may be a bigger Van Halen fan than I am.
I don't know. I don't know how big of a Van Halen fan you are. I mean,
It's pretty crazy how much of a Van Halen fan I am.
I see some Van Halen style guitars in the background, so that proves, to a degree that there's a Van Halen influence happening.
Yes.
Except they're all backwards.
That's
Yeah,
true.
the lefty version.
Yeah, the lefty.
Are they also strung upside down? So it's like Doyle Bramhall Van Halen,
No, that would be completely weird.
Wow.
Bram Halen.
The brand. I love it. I love it. But they are lefty. No, but right strung lefty though. So
Okay.
Yeah. You have the curse.
I do. Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy, and I can't stop buying guitars. So the newest edition is the Explorer right there, which I was
Nice.
really happy about getting this past
Actual
week.
Gibson one, or is it Ibanez or?
It's a Gibson Explorer, newer one.
Cool.
It was sold in January, and somebody locally on Craigslist was selling it for a crazy price. So I wrote
Nice.
Dave, and he's like, "Get it."
Well, it's pretty cheap. Why not?
It was, and you can't find it for that cheap. And so
And
I
it's
used
lefty,
you
so
for my wife. I used you as the excuse, Dave. I was like, Dave said
you
to
know,
get it.
wives everywhere hate me. They totally
Yeah.
fucking hate me.
Well,
They
I
have
mean,
for years.
That's funny.
just
Yeah.
based on gear purchase or that sort of thing, or does it go beyond?
No, it's basically it's the gear purchase thing that I make their husbands buy things.
Okay.
And I don't make
'Cause-
anyone buy anything. I just tell people what is cool. And then
Yeah.
it's up to them to buy it. It's not my fault, really.
Well, it's like that Far Side cartoon where they had this. It was this guy looking out his window, and there's a million people with signs that all say "Down with Wayne, no more Wayne," and then the caption was, "The world needed a scapegoat. They found Wayne." So that's you and
That's me, yeah.
your gear situation.
Yep.
It's all my
Dave-
fault.
Dave's the problem.
I'll take the blame. It's fine. Just keep
So-
buying it.
Reverb's also a problem, major problem. Do you use Reverb? Do you go on there?
Yeah, I just actually had a reverb sale of some stuff in a store that was put together, which I think still has a couple items in it. But
Oh, yeah.
I was, the thing about gear for me is I obviously enjoy using things and making sounds and all that stuff, but I don't get super attached to where it's like, oh, I must, this is an heirloom. It's like this stuff works, and if it ends up in a case for 10 years, I don't really need it anymore. So it should be out in the wild for others to enjoy. And so that was kind of the thing, is finding the stuff that shouldn't just be sitting in storage. Somebody should be playing it. So there's a good amount of guitars and some other gear, and there's probably going to be another sale like that at some point, just because I'd like to get to a point where I have just the guitars that I pretty much can rely on or just really need. And it used to be, when I was doing a lot of touring, there had to be doubles of certain guitars or even triples of certain guitars because something could get damaged, while you're out there, or stolen or whatever. So, but with the lack of touring, I don't know how much longer I will need doubles and triples of things. So
Yeah, we were talking about the other night about touring. So the plan is next year, hopefully.
yeah, for me, I'm waiting until next year because the reality of the business side of it, which is pretty unknown to the general public, is the majority of artists that have the ability to tour and do it in a way that involves a tour bus and keeping a band and crew out there on the road, and you have hotels and all these expenses and all that stuff, that has to all be paid for. There's a lot of upfront costs in putting a tour on. And typically a tour over its cycle, if let's say it's a 3-month tour, you might only, as the artist, even though you're paying for all these things and everybody else is getting paid during the process of this tour, you might not actually make any money yourself until the last 2 or 3 weeks or the last month of the tour. So if a tour is up and running, but then gets cut short because of a pandemic, right, you're out. There's nothing you can do. So it's like, that doesn't sound like a very good business proposition. It's very difficult to judge how all this stuff will work, because it's a lot of money to set up going on a tour, rehearsing the band, getting the tour bus. I mean, a tour bus can run you like $2,000 a day, and it's really expensive. Make that plus all the expenses of paying the band and other salaries and other expenses that come up. You're in $10,000 a day easy in expenses. Times 3 months. That's a lot of money to have to be fronting and making it all work. So it's not an easy business to work.
Yeah, and if something happens, then you're out all that money, so you can't do that. So
it's a real challenge. I mean, this has not been a good thing for a lot of industries, but the touring industry is forever changed in a lot of ways.
Well, let's hope it comes back soon.
Well, I know a lot of people are going out there and testing the waters, so that's good. But
yeah, lots. I'm seeing tons of that now.
Yeah. Well, I saw Ann Wilson out in Fort Myers with Tom Bukovac playing for her. And that was interesting. That was an interesting scene in Florida. Well, I am in Florida, but we got there, and that was like 3 weeks ago already, and we were wearing our masks.
No one else was.
And no one else was wearing their masks. And we were like, should we wear our masks? And they're like, it's optional. So we kind of walked in, and
hasn't that always been that in Florida?
Well, pretty much. Pretty much. Yeah. So but we took them off eventually and just sat and watched the show, and it was great.
I mean, that's how you're supposed to live your life, So it's just crazy, though. It's like it's not worth getting into the politics of any of it. It's just like, theoretically, we're not supposed to be wearing masks all the time. That's not true. So it's nice to not have to.
Yeah, and well, it was nice not to have to do it in a concert. So I was really happy to see a show and get out, have a beer and see some live music. That was fun. But so you must be excited. Your studio's getting done.
It's getting close. Yeah. I mean, I've been working on it for a little over 5 years, from the concept of what it was going to be, having it get built, getting it wired up and all that stuff. So we're, just a couple of weeks away from really being able to start testing everything and making it all work. But there's some pretty cool elements to it that are unique to this space. So you guys have probably heard about studios that have a contraption over the drum kit that is like, they call it a drumbrella, where it's like what you would see in an outdoor table, an umbrella over the table. Mm-hmm. And it can raise or lower so that it will change the actual pressure of what's happening for the microphones, like the sound that's going into the microphone. It's almost like an analog real world compressor it will do things to the sound.
They call it a cloud? Is that what they call it?
Well, they call it a drumbrella in most cases. Like a cloud is something that you would definitely see in a control room, and it's something that will control the reflections from the ground to over the main listening position, and it's usually got an angle. But the drumbrella is something that you can change the height, so you basically can alter the frequencies that are getting into the microphone and do some stuff. But my drum booth has not just this little flimsy kind of umbrella thing, the whole ceiling comes down.
Oh, wow.
And it you can adjust the height of the ceiling because it's on a winch, but it has a surface that has these really it's made by a company called Automute, and it's called Strata, and it's basically like I don't really have anything close by. Here's a towel that so imagine it's this, but like 5 times larger, these cube-like things at different sizes, and they absorb sound. It's a diffusion kind of thing. So what it will do is really change the high frequency stuff. You can control cymbals in a way that normally that's like a big problem when you're recording drums, is the cymbals can be a little out of control, and drummers have to really know how to balance how hard they're hitting the cymbals versus the drums. And especially if you use a lot of compression, the cymbals can go out of control. But this ceiling and the change of height and that the actual material controls that high frequency in a really cool way, so that the drums sound amazing in this space. But you can get it to be tighter, or you can have a little bit more space, just depending on the height of the room. So it's pretty cool.
That sounds cool.
That's super cool.
Yeah, very, very much. Is this in your house?
Well, it's at a secret location.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't planning on coming over, but I was just curious. That's cool. That's cool. So I've been listening to a ton of your Running with the Dweezil podcast.
The podcast. Okay.
Yeah. So which I love. I mean,
thanks.
which you're still doing, right? You're still
it's supposed to have 30 episodes in total for the whole thing to be completed, and I'm still in production on these. So we're just entering the Sammy era, which is, we call it the right here, right now era. And that's going to be all the episodes that relate to the Sammy Hagar era Van Halen records those are the ones that will be released in the next few weeks. But the whole premise of the podcast is to give, imagine the Ken Burns style documentary. If Ken Burns was going to do an 8-part docu-series on Van Halen and get super deep, it's that kind of thing. It's we talk with guitar players that we go song by song, album by album, people who have stories where they've met or worked with Edward Van Halen or any of the members of Van Halen. And we just really kind of get into a lot of the details about how things might have been done, ideas of how things could have even come up, because there's things when you really investigate stuff, especially in the classic records, the first 6, the early years, there's things that you listen back to it, a song like, say, Push Comes to Shove from Fair Warning, which has this kind of reggae feel to it.
Right.
It's the only thing that they ever did that sounded anything like that. But there's very little information about that song. So it was a challenge to try to find some information. And one of the coolest things I was able to find out was I spoke with Don Landy, who obviously engineered a lot of the Van Halen stuff, or all the classic early stuff. And he didn't have too many specific stories about that, but the solo on that song, to me, is the best Van Halen solo of all time. And I wanted to know if he recalled whether it was a first take solo or if Ed really specifically worked it out. And he said it was a 3-part comp. So he played 3 solos and then he comped it together. But he had never done a comp solo before. And so what was happening was while they were listening to the parts and trying to switch from one to the other, they were doing it on faders. And the motion of it just never was timing out right. They couldn't get the feel, the levels. It just didn't get what they were looking for. It didn't blend well enough. So Don was trying it, and then Ed said, well, let me give it a try. And he tried it, but it still wasn't turning out the way they wanted. So Ed asked if they could use these toggle switches that were on the upper part of the API console. So the audio was rerouted to that section of the console so he could just use the toggle switch, turn on, off. And he did it on the first take and got the comp, and that's the solo that we hear now. But we don't know what the other solos were, because as amazing as that solo is comped together, maybe there were even cooler parts in sections that we just will never get a chance to hear. But I just love it.
So they don't exist on tape still?
Well, that's the thing, is that they didn't think about posterity of these things. They were really like streamlined. You know, they didn't even use 24 tracks most of the time. They had the option of it, but most songs were less than 20 tracks.
Yeah.
So if they had a final print and this is what was going to be used, they just took what was ever on the reels, put it onto a master reel, and those other reels were just left on the cutting room floor. You know, they didn't keep the extra takes.
Crazy. So that's awesome, you guys. I was going to ask if you got a chance to speak to some guys like Don Landy, maybe Rudy Liren, any of these guys that...
I haven't spoken with Rudy, but I've spoken with Don. I'd like to actually be able to get him to participate in an actual interview, but it hasn't been something that he's wanted to do. He's very shy about stuff like that. But I know that he is happy that people like those records and have some affinity towards the work that he put into it. But he's not really somebody that is seeking that kind of adulation for the stuff. Right. He's just like, well, I was just there, you know, I just did a couple things. But meanwhile, you know, he did some amazing things.
I kind of think that those first 6 records, the reason they sound like they do is because of Don.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, I loved Ed, and working with him was great, but, you know, given his own, left to himself, he was gonna not make it sound like you want it to sound. Well, let's just put it that way. He had his own ideas of how it should have sounded, but I think Don actually made it sound the way we have come to love it.
Well, there's a certain element that, from an artistic standpoint, if you're the artist, you have an idea of what you want it to be. Mm-hmm. The producer has an idea of how it should be heard for the audience at large, and the engineer has to kind of bridge the gap between all of those things. And so let's talk about Van Halen 1, for example. The sound that we came to love, which had all that reverb, and the guitar was mostly on the left side, Ed didn't like it because if you were in a car and you sat in the passenger seat, you couldn't hear his guitar.
Yeah.
You know, but if you think about the delivery system to the audience, and you are in a stereo field and you hear what's going on, like, you absolutely know 100% of what each guy is delivering. So you know what Ed's doing, you know what Alex is doing, you know what Michael's doing, and you certainly know what Dave's doing. And the way that all came together was ingenious, because there's very little overdubs, yet there's this really nice space that glues it all together. And it just sounds like what these guys sound like when they play. It wasn't overdone. And once we got used to hearing that to begin with, it was the excitement of the immediacy of that sound. And then of course you get the space with the reverb. But if you're Edward Van Halen, you're thinking, why does it have to have so much reverb? Why can't I be in both speakers? You know, so for years that was kind of a problem for him, even though the fans really appreciated it. I can also see from his point of view why he would have been like, I mean, why can't we just have a little bit more direct sound without so much reverb over there? So as the years go by, the sounds change a little bit, you know, and by the time he gets to a record like Balance, there's tons of overdubs, and that might be their best sounding modern record in terms of the production and engineering. That thing, if nothing else, Alex sounds like the king on that record. I mean, it's a great drum sound, and but you know, they had all this chance to mature in different ways with their music, where sometimes a fan base doesn't want the band to go there. Look at AC/DC. You're never going to hear a ballad from AC/DC. The fans don't request a ballad from them. You know, like even when Angus played a little bit of slide guitar, they're like, nope, do what you do. Don't pick up a slide. But, you know, as an artist, you might get frustrated by the lack of, you know, that open-minded feeling that the audience should just take the journey with you. So, you know, me growing up hearing my dad's music and watching what he didn't care about what anybody else was thinking about what he was doing. He just did what he did because he liked it. And if somebody else liked it, that was a bonus. He was just going to do what he was going to do because that's the sound that was in his head. So there's all these places that you have to kind of put into perspective as an artist in terms of how you're going to reach your audience. But generally speaking, Van Halen really hit the nail on the head with how to deliver it.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Simon Hosford sent us a super chat. Greetings from freezing cold Melbourne, Australia. Dave and Dweezil, Mark, Dave and Dweezil, you're running with the Dweezil podcast is so wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the super chat.
Thank you, Simon. Now, anybody that doesn't know Simon, they should check him out because he's a really amazing rock guitar player, but he also studied a lot of different styles, and he played with Tommy Emmanuel, who's one of the most amazing acoustic guitar players on the planet. But Simon can play all the Van Halen songs note for note, and he did a version of the first Van Halen record. They did a tribute concert, and he did an amazing job playing that stuff because it's not easy to play all those songs and play it down, you know?
No, not at all. I know that for a fact. I think I missed a super chat from Mark Caliwera. He says, hey guys, love the show. He's in Florida, which is cool. By way of Honolulu, I guess he was in Hawaii. Question for Dave. Is there a difference in the circuit between the combo version and the head of the small box? I think it's the same, right?
No, same. Exact.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Glad I didn't miss that. So I was curious, Dweezil, did you see the recent video that Dave and Pete Thorne did on like testing 25 different pickups?
I heard about it before it was made, but I didn't get a chance to see it yet. I was definitely very curious about it because, you know,
it was my dumb idea. And let me tell you, after doing it, boy, fuck, it was a dumb idea.
So did you guys try to do it in real time, like have to solder these things?
We did. I don't know what the final count was. 20 odd some pickups in a day in the same guitar, or mostly the same guitar. And we had different pick guards that we could swap in. So it was,
he did a Destroyer. He had the 78 black and white, right, that he was testing in also.
Yeah, most all of it was in this one, like, black and white Van Halen build.
Yeah.
That ash body, maple neck, you know.
Well, I definitely want to watch it, but what was the general consensus?
Well, you know, here's the thing. It seems like the general consensus was that for the early sound, Pete kind of also played his Ibanez Destroyer. And really, for the early sound, it was most likely it was a Mighty Mite Super Distortion clone that was used in the Ibanez Destroyer. And the funny thing is the Destroyer just doesn't sound like any other guitar. And like Stuff You Really Got Me and stuff off the first record.
Yeah.
So much of it was the Destroyer. And I mean, you definitely heard, because he did an outtake with a distortion pickup in the Destroyer, and it's like, yeah, that's that tone, you know.
Well, I played the actual Destroyer that was the number 2 one because, you know, Ed ruined his, or, you know, he made it look cool as hell, but he didn't like the sound of it anymore. Yeah. But the one that he then borrowed from Chris Holmes, that red one with kind of the white bleed through kind of thing. I got a chance to play that guitar recently, and that guitar plays amazing, but it has that sound. I mean, first of all, just the string tree, the Running with the Devil, that sound it's however those strings go over that bridge, that's the identical pitches of the thing. But there's a liveliness to it, and the playability of that guitar is such that the Ice Cream Man lick is actually pretty easy as a stretch on that, whereas on the Strat, it's much harder. Yeah. But that you could see why he would like that guitar, because it just had a great sound, and he used that guitar on some stuff when he had damaged his other one.
Well, here's the gist of it was early stuff. Van Halen 1, it seems to be the higher output Super Distortion or Mighty Mite clone of Super Distortion, because Pete also had Larry DiMarzio on his show once, and he was talking to him about that a little bit, and he goes, yeah, the Mighty Mite was they literally came out with a clone of our pickup, and it's really the same specs, the same ceramic magnet, same everything. And we had an original one that we put in the guitar, I think, for the video, and that pickup sounds really good. So that was, you know, the early stuff, the high output saturated thing. The later stuff probably comes down to an Alnico 2 9K wound PAFE pickup. And that's what we seem to gather from listening to all these pickups. Now, but like I said too, in the end, all these pickups, it depends on the guitar you're putting them in. I mean, you know, you're chasing a ghost, because, you know, he put some pickup in the guitar at some point in time, and it was made out of this certain chunk of wood. If you try the same pickup we tried in the Ash guitar, in an Alder guitar, maybe you'll like a different pickup from the Shootout in the Alder guitar better than that particular pickup. So you're chasing, the bottom line is high output for the early stuff, and later stuff was like around 9K Alnico 2 probably.
Yeah, well,
judging from everyone we talked to.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you're talking about the last 3 to 5% of the personality of the sound that you're trying to replicate, whereas the average person's not going to hear some of those subtleties or differences, you know. But if you're such a fan, it's worth it to go down that rabbit hole, you know, to see it like, okay, how can we get there, you know? And I like that stuff is being done and people are experimenting with it. And you and Pete have done a lot of that stuff, and it's been fun to watch.
Yeah. It's interesting though, but honestly, you know, for anyone who's on that search, you have to try it in the guitar that you're going to use and with your own hands, because that changes everything.
Yeah.
So just because you like that one pickup in our Shootout in that one particular guitar with Pete playing it does not necessarily translate to your guitar, you playing it. So you might need to morph that a little bit.
So they have to do their own 20 pickup Shootout.
Kind of.
Find out.
Yeah, kind of.
Pretty much. That's a lifelong quest.
Yeah.
Patrick Miller's got a super chat. Thanks for it. Just a nugget for us tone freaks. I read this previously. There's a Crank Saldano featured on John Mayer's new song, Last Train Home. Great song and tone. I would agree. It's actually a very good song.
I haven't heard it yet. He's a good songwriter and he's a good player. So, I mean, I would imagine that he got a good sound.
Yeah, I think he's going through his Clapton like '80s journeyman phase right now, because that's kind of the vibe I'm getting from the album cover, the video that he did. You know, I'm not a huge John Mayer fan, but I definitely respect where he's going with this. It sounds pretty good.
Good.
There's another super chat. Harmonicaster. What was the disposition of the vault of Frank's recordings? Disposition.
I'm not exactly sure what that question is really asking, but my guess is people are wondering where the stuff ended up. I have nothing to do with any of those tapes. It's dealt with by other members of my family who they do what they want to with them. So I don't know where they live. I don't know what's there or anything about what they put out or anything.
Gotcha. Here's an easy one. Mike in Miami. Thanks for being awesome, guys. All right.
Yes. That's a difficult one to speak to. Okay, let's what does it mean? How do you get to awesome? I mean, is that here? Is it here? We don't know.
Yeah. I'm just trying to get to these because they disappear quickly. Ronan Lone Wolf, thanks for the super chat. Thank you guys for another great show. Appreciate you, Dweezil. Love you, man. Peace. Oh, cool.
Thanks.
That was easy too.
Yeah.
No, thanks, man. That was really cool. Appreciate it.
We got waiting for a tough one, a real challenge.
I think I'm. Oh, okay. Let's see. I may have missed this one. From sgrape49jj. Dweezil, I previously heard you say Frank had good harmonic control of his guitar. Can you give examples of this and how it was achieved?
So I don't know if that's a complete explanation, but the harmonic content of his vocabulary, the things that he could choose to play, he had a very broad vocabulary. So if you only know 10 words, you're going to have a hard time not repeating yourself a lot. And my dad had a thesaurus worth of, every version of everything that you could need to have, okay, here's one idea, but I can change it to all these different colors and flavors and whatever. So because he was a composer and he understood music in a way that was beyond just being a guitar player or just being a musician, he played with a mindset that was so different than a lead guitar player. So if you're going to try to play in a similar style to Frank Zappa, your challenge is going to be, are you able to hear what everybody's doing and respond in real time with new ideas without repeating yourself, and have this contour rhythmically, harmonically that is changing all the time? And that broad vocabulary allowed him to do stuff like that. He could play a 12-minute guitar solo and not repeat himself because he didn't have like lick number 1 fast, lick number 1 slow. He didn't have this bag of tricks kind of thing. He actually just would hear music, what was happening, and he'd respond. If the bass player played something, he'd play something off of that. Drummer played a fill, he'd play something off of that. And it was a conversation that went back and forth. And that is probably the hardest thing to do as a musician, which is to make sure you're listening and stay in a receptive place and be present in that way, because most musicians don't get enough of an opportunity to play with people often and know what it's like to have to just take it in and work together and do this thing. They don't have those hundreds or thousands of hours on stage or in rehearsal places. So that was the thing back in the day, that he was playing all the time and he was writing very specific things to try and go new places. So his vocabulary was immense, but he also used very interesting and different guitar sounds, which are hard to recreate, but the thing about them is they really had a certain kind of personality for his style of playing, which he had a very strange way of picking. It was a very like plucky, the pick was held between these two fingers, but it wasn't wrist motion a lot. It was this kind of motion here, and a lot of really kind of upstroke pluckiness, which when you look at it, it's so idiosyncratic that you could never say, oh, I'm going to adopt that picking style. It's not so I always joke that it was like the battle between the chicken and the spider, because his hand looked like a spider over here and the chicken's pecking at stuff and the spider's going like this. So you got the chicken and the spider happening, and it's crazy.
Yeah, he was a genius. By the way, he was my first concert.
That is pretty cool. What year?
Yeah. Well, it's somewhere around like 1980, 1981. It was for...
So probably You Are What You Is.
Well, the shirt that I had, this is what I remember, okay? The shirt I had said, "Shut up and play your guitar."
Okay.
It. And it had like a pumpkin on it. And and that was, I had that shirt for years. So, and I talked to Steve Vai when he was on the show, and I thought it was Vai who was playing with him and Terry Bozzio at the time, but apparently it wasn't. That was
well, if it was 1980 or 1981, that's right around the time that Steve joined the band, but Terry wasn't in the band at that time. So there was a guy that did one tour. Dave Logeman played drums briefly, but then Chad Wackerman came in and he stayed in the band up until 1988.
Yeah, I can't remember, but it was at the Sunrise Musical Theater down here in South Florida. And
Nice.
It was a great show. I just remember that. But it was my first concert. I was like 12, 13
Well,
years
that's
old.
pretty sweet to see, because when I would see these shows growing up, it was like a magic trick to see these guys play this stuff, because every song segued. There were all these hand signals. If you were in the band, you had to watch my dad at all times, because he was going to change stuff and you had to be ready for it. And if you weren't, that was not going to be good. He had a phrase which was window or aisle, which meant, how would you like to have your ticket home?
That's tough.
Yeah.
Vib Hospital, how are you? And like Pete Thorne, who said on his show, I hope I'm not butchering your name. I really hope not. Hey, Dweezil, I mean to ask you this in a very sincere way. Can you please comment on the publishing and legal side of things in the music business? And can you share some advice based on your experiences in this regard?
So it's kind of a broad topic, and I'm not exactly sure what you're wanting to know more of, but in these current times, as a musician, you don't have the income that used to happen for musicians from the 70s and the 80s in terms of music publishing. That used to be a huge part of people's earning potential, but because people don't buy records anymore, there's very little of that publishing money coming in for a lot of people. And so there's a few artists that still sell a pretty good amount of records, and they'll be getting publishing money from that. But the legal side of things, I'm not sure what he's referring to, but when it comes to getting licensing and stuff like that, there's things that are required when you want to be able to use music in a film, or certain things. You have to get certain licenses. If you want to put music with a picture, there's a sync right and a sync fee and all that kind of stuff. But it's a complicated business, but it's harder and harder for artists to make any real money from it. And I'll give you an example. If you are a fan of streaming music, which most people, that's how they deal with music these days, they don't really understand that they don't own music anymore. They're just renting music. And the people that are renting you the music didn't buy it to rent it to you. So if you had to, let's say you wanted to rent a car to someone, you'd have to buy the car before you could rent it to them. If you wanted to have a whole bunch of cars to rent to people, you'd have to spend a lot of money to have a fleet of cars to then rent money and try to make your money back. But Spotify and all these other places, they don't buy the music from people. from the artists. It's just given to them. And then they get all this money from this membership, and the artists get nano pennies on the dollar. So if you look at what an artist can earn from streaming, it's remarkably small, and people don't realize. So in fact, Spotify put something out not too long ago where they showed, and this was ostensibly to show it in a positive way, but it doesn't really come off as positive, because they showed that only 40,000 people out of the millions of songs and millions of artists that are within that, system, only 40,000 are able to make minimum wage. Now, you can't even make an album and survive. Like if your record cost you $20,000 or $30,000, which would be a cheap album, you can't even make that money back. And if you do, you can't live on that, right? So, like to say that streaming is the way that you're gonna really strike it rich, it really isn't, because you can't rely on this possibility that you could. It takes 3.8 million streams to make $15,000. So, it's crazy. So it really is a very challenging and difficult time to be a musician. Yet there's so much technology that enables people to not only make better sounding music and make cool things and get it to people directly and have this experience where you can build a relationship directly with your fans. But yet that's not the model that people are going towards. People are taking this, the consumer says, oh, sure, I'd love to have access to 50 million songs, and I'll pay a monthly fee to do that. But the artists who are making this stuff for you, they're not getting anything from it.
No.
Yeah, it's.
I actually always try. I don't stream generally. I always try to buy stuff from the artists. I just don't feel right about it. I just can't.
I mean, it's okay if people are streaming, but they ought to, if they really want to support an artist directly, they should go to their website and do stuff to whatever they have that can be purchased directly from the artist. It's a very good idea. And during this whole pandemic, one of the things that I ended up doing was I worked with a friend of mine, and we created a platform that's called Reward Music. And the whole premise of this thing is to be able to put all your stuff in one place, whether it's your merchandise and your music. And if you want to do streaming, or if you want to do a podcast, or if you want to do anything that is pay-per-view, you could have it all on your own website that's hosted by Reward Music. And you have just that singular location. It's like the Amazon for your own music. And an artist can have their fan base come to them directly and purchase from there. But not only that, the artist has a way to give back to their fans, because there's a point system. So the more that you do to support an artist, the lower the price is for the things that you may want in the future. So, let's say there's a $30 shirt, and you've bought a few records, or you bought a few songs. Now that's a $25 shirt. You buy some more stuff. Now that's a $15 shirt. So it's a way to identify your core fans and be able to develop this ongoing relationship with them, and make it easy for your fans to find all your stuff in one place. So it's not to say that you couldn't have your stuff on Spotify or iTunes or Tidal or any of those places, because you could. But the point is that you could make more money selling directly to your core fans if you look at it like this. Instead of trying to make $1 from 1 million people randomly that you may try to get your stuff out there to, if you're able to generate $100 from, say, 10,000 people, you make the same amount of money, right? But you have the ability to seek to have this core group of people have a more exclusive experience and be more in contact with you. You don't have to try to be ubiquitous and reach everybody. You need to reach your core people that want to support you directly. And the more that can happen, the more sustainable your life as a musician can become. And that is the whole real change that can make a big difference for most artists if they can figure out how to make that direct connection. And Reward Music just happens to be a very easy platform to make that possible. and that's why we created it.
Sounds
Put a
great.
link I'll put a link to that in the video description so people can check that out, or whatever
Yeah.
information I can share on that.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, it's a great idea, actually. I like it. Jimmy Biter? Dweezil, please shed some light on the PV Wiggy.
Okay, this is perfect for this tone talk. Okay, the PV Wiggy is an amplifier that was made with the company PV, right? But
Yep.
it was a solid state amplifier. And the thing about it was a really, really cool sounding amplifier. But when it went into music stores, PV didn't train the people that were selling the equipment to let them understand that the default position for that amplifier had these hazard lights that were blinking. That meant that it was in, because it looked like the dashboard of an old Aston Martin. That was like the look of this thing with like a speedometer and stuff. So, but when it was in that default position, if you didn't have the foot switch to be able to turn that off, you couldn't get the majority of the sounds that the amp was designed to make, because the default position was a lead position, figuring that most people are going to try to turn everything up and you're going to want to hear this lead tone that it can make. But when that hazard switch is on, there's part of the clipping circuit that you can never fully get rid of to get a good clean sound. So that is the problem that a lot of people, when they went to play with it, they're like, this thing sounds like it's broken, because they didn't know how to use it, and they didn't know that you had to have the hazard lights turned off to get all of the cool clean sounds, or the in-between dirty clean stuff. But what was cool about the amp was that it had a graphic EQ that was totally different than any other normal graphic EQ for a guitar, because it was actually based on a bass amplifier. So it had all these really cool, weird low frequencies that you could do, and really interesting mid-range things. And it did really cool stuff with any kind of single coil guitar. And it took pedals really well. Fuzz tones sounded really cool with it. But it just was a confusing amp for people, because they didn't understand that the foot switch needed to be engaged to really work the controls. So it's kind of like, if you don't know how to use an 1176 compressor, you're going to make it sound all crazy, because you're just thinking, oh, it makes more sense if I turn it this way. This would be the direction to get the sound. But sometimes it's the opposite. And so it's that kind of thing where the manual gave some pretty good presets and some things to explain the best practices. But generally people just, they love the look of the amp, and the people that actually found a way to use it, they really liked what they could do with it. But like I said, it's just one of those things where nobody was trained to sell it on the sales floor. So they often had it without the foot switch, and then people are just like, I don't get this thing.
Right.
I remember when they came out, and actually the studio where my band would practice at, I haven't seen it recently, but of course I practiced once in like the past 2 years with them because of the pandemic and everything.
Yeah.
They used to have a Wiggy in the waiting room area.
Yeah,
It's cool.
it's a
It
cool
looked great.
looking amp.
Cool
Yeah.
looking amp. Yeah, it really is.
We did do a prototype tube version, which they didn't end up releasing, and that one was interesting too, because it really was something that you could kind of dial in different eras of Van Halen pretty easily, but do some other stuff too, because it also had a graphic EQ and some other stuff that was unusual for a tube amp. And I have 2 prototypes of it, and in the studio I'm going to be able to start getting those things into a place where I can start plugging into them, because I've got some of those Ampete amp switchers, so I'll be able to have different amps and cabinets and stuff. And part of what I really like with being able to play with different sounds is having the left and the right be completely different from each other. a lot of times when people are making guitar sounds, they're trying to really blend the same thing on both sides, which is in a way a mono sound. But I like to have the notes kind of bloom differently and kind of have this swimming effect, and not because it's always got some kind of modulation on it, but it's more the envelope of the note. So like if you had a fuzz tone on one side and you had just straight amp gain on the other side, you're going to have an immediate attack on one side and the other one's going to kind of suck up, and they're going to do these different things. And then if you add modulation or delays or stuff, you get this thing that feels like it's reacting. It's like the Blob, you know, it's this thing, you know. So that's the kind of stuff that my dad was really into as well. And the craziest rig he had was, now imagine this, in 1975, he spent $30,000 to create a guitar rig, which at that time, it had never been done before. He had presets, he had a pedal board that had presets that you could have access whichever effects you wanted, store them. He had actual pedals that could either control volume or a wah, even though it wasn't the actual wah pedal. All this stuff was built in 1975 in this like crazy black thing with big knobs and lights and stuff. And he had 3 amps and 2 DIs, and it was a 5 signal beast that he could blend all this different stuff. So the DIs would have actual studio compressors. They had DBX 160 compressors, and his guitars had this is pretty unique. He basically had his guitars up to line level. So he had all these electronics where he had gain that came from the guitar, and he had the EQ circuits. He had parametric equalizers in these guitars. So he basically had a studio on his guitar, and he was able to use studio effects. So he was using the Eventide harmonizer, the Marshall time modulator, all these things, but he was able to hit the guitar at the right level. I mean, hit the units at the right level because the guitar had so much more output. And when he used his amplifiers, like Marshalls, he barely used any preamp gain because the guitar had such a high output. So his signal to noise ratio was pretty amazing because there was never this wall of hiss or any of that kind of stuff. So he got all this amazing gain and fuzz and all these things, but he didn't have to run the gain of the pedals or the amps crazy because the guitar, you know, he just really did it different than everybody else.
Who built that for him?
There were a couple different people that worked on it, and I am spacing on the name. I think there was a guy named Dave Robb who was his guitar tech at the time, but I don't think Dave was the guy that was doing the electronic stuff. I cannot remember who built that, but the actual pedal board exists in a really cool museum this guy has put together it's just outside of Philadelphia, that this guy has every synthesizer known to man and pretty much every guitar amp ever made, all this kind of crazy stuff. And it's in I don't know, I want to say like a 30,000 square foot warehouse where he's got just pallet upon pallet. Like so he's got all these Pete Townsend Marshalls. He's got all this stuff like Jimi Hendrix, all these things, but it's like, okay, here's a little stage plot, and then above it is a stage plot, and then above that. So you walk down rows of this stuff where it's stacked, you know, it's like 20 feet in the air. So, you know, 12 Marshalls here, you know, a bunch of high watts here, whatever. So it's like, it's nuts. You walk through that and you can't believe. And then there's just a billion keyboards, and you can play them and you can hear them, and it's everything, all the analog synths in the world, but just the craziest stuff.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. We've got a super chat from John DeShane. What's up, John? Big fan, guys. Dweezil loved the Confessions album when it came out. What's the story, if any, behind Obviously Influenced by the Devil? Also love your dad's live sexual harassments in the workplace.
Oh, cool. Well, that song, Sexual Harassment in the Workplace, was just a kind of bluesy vamp. And he played it for 1 or 2 tours, and everybody seems to really like that one because it's got a bluesy, jazzy kind of thing, but it just feels good. Like the feel of the track, and then he played with kind of a clean sound on it a lot of times, which was cool. But the Confessions record, the song obviously Influenced by the Devil, the intro of it is pretty complicated and it has a lot of weird rhythms. And when I first wrote it and I was working with the guys in the band to say, okay, we're going to play this, I played it, and I don't remember who it was in the band, but somebody said, well, that was obviously Influenced by the Devil. So that became the name of the song right then and there. There was another song on the record that was called Flack, and people always asked, why was it, what's that mean? That song didn't have a title, but it started with just the snare drum, so Flack, boom, dang, dang, so right. When we were referring to that song, when we wanted to play it, we say, oh, let's play Flack, and it just stuck. But obviously Influenced by the Devil is a tune that has a Steinberger with a trans trem, and I used it to go up to the F sharp position. It modulates towards the end of the song. It might actually do it a couple times, but the trans trem, Edward Van Halen started using it on the 5150 record, and it was a really cool thing made by Steinberger, where if you don't know anything about it, it's a vibrato bar system that can go up or down, but the whole guitar will stay in tune. It's almost as if you had an open tuning and you were playing slide, it's the same as that happening in that same way, but you're pulling the bar, and whatever chord you're playing will go in tune on the way up or on the way down.
It's super cool.
But beyond that, you could then lock it into a position. It had these little teeth.
Notches,
so it would be able to lock into this post that's part of the bridge. So you could move it and then kind of push it that way, and it would lock in. And so you could change the tuning of your guitar on the fly, which is what Ed did a bunch of times using that particular guitar. So I had one of those. Actually, I had 2 of those. One had EMGs, and the other one had Seymour Duncan pickups in it. So they both sounded different. But the Confessions record, most of the record used that Steinberger, and it was the one with the EMGs.
You still have them?
I just sold them on Reverb.
Oh, the trans trems are just going for crazy money. It's crazy.
They're pretty amazing inventions, but the thing is, they're a beast. When you break a string, it's not so simple to then get the thing to just, you have to do a lot of stuff to intonate it, and that was not always the easiest thing to do. I remember spending hours trying to get the thing. But when I first got it out of the case, you couldn't knock that guitar out of tune. I mean, it stayed in tune perfect. But as soon as I broke a string, it took me like almost a year to get it back in tune. It was insane.
Wow.
I wish we were talking about this last show. I wish Gibson would reissue it or come out with it again. Or
it would be cool. I mean, I'm sure they have the ability to do it. It's just a question of who wants it.
I want it.
Yeah,
I know
the
that.
lefty
So
version.
you're getting a lefty?
Yeah, exactly. I'll never get one.
Yeah, forget that.
Yeah, it's done. Quality Kraut. Thanks for the super chat. Hey, Mark and Dave. Obviously love the show. Dave, thank you, by the way. Dave, what is your favorite 20-watt amp in your line? Primarily a bedroom basement player and looking for something to get in addition to my Sir PT15.
JJ Junior amp. The Cantrell Mini, so to speak. I would say it's my favorite.
Yeah, it's a great amp. I've got it right.
Get that one
there. Right there. That's a good amp. Cool. Lawrence Christensen, super chat, but no question. Did I miss it?
I don't think so.
If I did, BV, message me. Let me know if I missed his super chat. All right. Vinny, what's up? Hey, amigos. Congrats on the amazing 101. 2 questions. Dave, could you modify my Egnator 20 to a small box head?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you wanted it to be a JJ head before.
He can't decide.
Okay. And for Dweezil, when was the last time you saw Ed, and what did you both talk about? Love you guys. Thank you.
I don't remember the exact last time, but I know that maybe 5, 6 months before we all got the bad news, I had talked to him, and he said he was doing great, and we just talked about some normal life situations and talked about some music and some things. So it was nice to talk to him, but we weren't talking about anything that was different than other things we've talked about before. It was always, music, life stuff.
Right.
Mm.
I mean, I love the story about, you meeting him as a young kid and, just being such a fan. I mean, what an amazing stuff. And you guys, we don't have to recover that here, but if you guys want to hear all that stuff, you should definitely hear the podcast with Dweezil. I think you cover that, right?
Oh yeah, we talk about that.
Yeah.
It comes up in various different ways. The Rhyme with the Dweezil podcast, which you can find the podcast on dweezilzappa.com, but also the podcast is something that if you decide that you want to check it out, it also supports two very good causes. One of them is Feeding America, and the other is the Mr. Holland's Opus Foundation, which that was Edward's favorite charity. And Van Halen had also done a lot to raise money and get food drives on some of their tours to help feed people. So this podcast goes a long way towards also helping those things move forward as well.
Yeah. Great.
Awesome. Good stuff. L. Scott Music. Dweezil, thanks for being here. Are you aware of SONA, Songwriters of North America? We are fighting for songwriters in a dreadful streaming world.
I do not know of SONA, but maybe now I need to know, so I will check it out.
Songwriters of North America. Cool. Yeah,
now you're going to leave out the songwriters of South America, the songwriters of Iceland.
That's funny. So what else is going on with your band? Are you recording anything, or?
I haven't been able to do anything yet. I'm going to be able to start doing some recording soon. So the real exciting thing that I'm looking forward to being able to do with the studio is that it's set up to record and mix in Atmos. So mixing in Atmos is one thing that is very that's starting to be an important part of the delivery of music in this modern world, because now that can be heard in headphones. So Atmos is height and surround. So it can actually be a very three-dimensional sound for you in headphones. Obviously, if you have a tuned system with speakers in the ceiling and all that stuff, it's an incredible way to listen to music that has been put into that format. Now, the thing is, there's legacy music, all the music that has ever been recorded up until modern times. All of that stuff in some way, shape, or form can be mixed and presented in that way. Hold on one second. My wife has just come in here and she's brought something to me. Oh, thank you. Yes, she brought me eggplant from the garden that has been cooked up, but I'm still on the show.
Sorry?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. So anyway, the music can be mixed in that format, which can be amazing. But now you can actually start thinking about writing music to specifically have music or instruments placed in places and have the mix designed before you ever even record it. And you can record and capture the ambience in a way to have that specifically planned out. So that's a very different thing, which hasn't really been explored yet. And my studio is set up to be able to do that. So I'm looking forward to being able to work with different musicians and collaborate and do things And it's also going to have the ability to do live streaming right from the studio with studio quality sound. And we have cameras that will be able to do like a live cut, line cut, just do it straight from, it's like having a TV studio. So it's going to be a really cool thing. It's going to take some time to work through all the kinks and the bugs and get it going, but there's a lot of exciting things to happen. And I decided to go that way because I don't know what's happening with touring. So I have to be able to do something to continue to make some interesting, exciting content and push some boundaries and do some things that interest me and hopefully bring about some really cool collaborations. And so that's what I'm looking forward to.
Oh, that's great. I guess you could also, if you wanted to, you could perform live and, and charge people to watch.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of subscription-based things that can happen, TV series of whatever. I mean, it's like anything can be done if you have good ideas and the ability to show it in a good way and has good quality sound and cool video. It's your own Netflix.
Yeah, I mean, I love live at Daryl's house.
Yeah, I mean, it's like any of this kind of stuff can be done in this facility.
That's great. That's cool. Jason Thurlow. Hi, Dweezil. Thank you for your artistry and playing Frank's music and your Zappa Plays Zappa band. Saw you in Atlantic City 2 times, Harrah's and House of Blues, and in DC Experience Hendrix Tour. Amazing.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, can you talk about the Experience Hendrix Tour? Because a friend of mine actually went to that as well and said it was awesome. He met you actually backstage here in South Florida.
Oh, cool. Well, It's been a really fun experience the times that I've got to do it. I think I have been on the tour 6 times. I can't remember. They've been doing it for a long time. And what it really is like a guitar summer camp. All these different guitar players get to come and play together and play music that they love. I mean, who doesn't, if you're a guitar player, who doesn't love Jimi Hendrix guitar music? I mean, you'd have to have something seriously wrong to not enjoy it. So if you get a chance to do it, you are in venues and you're on tour buses and you're having this camaraderie and this sort of like summer camp kind of experience for a couple of months. And I often was paired with Eric Johnson. So a lot of the songs that we would play, we'd sit around backstage and learn things and talk about stuff and practice. And it just was a really fun time to be part of this thing. So the few times the lineup has been Zakk Wylde, Eric Johnson, Los Lobos, Kenny Wayne Shepherd. I mean, there's typically like 15 well-known guitar players on the thing. Robbie Krieger's done it. I'm spacing on it because Eric Gales, he plays amazing.
He's awesome.
Lots and lots of different guys. Brad Whitford from Aerosmith. So the fun of it is the camaraderie side of playing with these guys, getting to know everybody, and it's all put on by Jimi Hendrix, Experience Hendrix. His family's putting this on, so it's a really exciting thing to be a part of, and it just spreads his music everywhere.
Yeah, it's great. Have you seen that PRS came out with a new Hendrix amp?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, and it's actually officially licensed by the family.
Oh, that's cool. Well,
yeah.
They made a Marshall.
Yeah. Did they just rewind the transformer to match one of his specific amps or something?
They supposedly saw a specific amp that they got the specs off of, so I don't know much more than that.
Yeah,
I think it was at the whatever his name. I'm totally spacing on the rich guy's name, Paul something. Anyway, he owns that museum, and they have Hendrix's amp in that museum, and supposedly Paul Reed Smith and Doug Sewell, I think his name is, from PRS, they went and took a look at the amp, and they made changes, I guess, apparently. But yeah, it's a Marshall, basically.
Well, I bet it sounds good. You know, I mean,
it sounded good in the videos. Yeah, it sounded pretty cool.
Yeah, well, that's cool.
It was interesting that they went with PRS. I was kind of like, what happened? But then people reminded me that Marshall.
Well, the licensing of Hendrix hasn't exactly been like the best choices over the years. Remember, there was a Gibson Hendrix guitar.
Yes, I do remember that.
Well, you know, I mean, it's just one of those things where he played some Gibson sometimes. I don't know which guitar it was. Did they try to make a Strat, or they?
Yeah, they tried to make a Strat.
Okay, so that would have been,
it was a mess.
That would have been maybe a little clumsy, but you know, I mean, they should have maybe just done the Flying V that he played, or you know, an SG.
Exactly.
Okay, that would have been cool. Sure,
that would have been great, actually.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, the thing about stuff like that, obviously, Jimi Hendrix has some guitar tones that everybody loves, and if there's an amp that can kind of get you closer to it straight out of the gate, people are going to be interested in it. And I don't think it necessarily matters if it's Marshall or if it's Fender or whatever it is. If the thing delivers the goods and it has a sound, whatever the name is, you know, I mean, they could have easily just come to Dave Friedman and said, "Hey, let's do this thing." You know, it's like the idea is hopefully make it sound good, and then
that's true,
know,
right?
Well, that's a great point, Dave. Would you have done a signature amp, Hendrix amp, if they came to you?
Probably. I mean, you know, why not? I mean, sure.
Okay.
I would have been very careful how I did it, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, you know, the thing is, so many sounds that we all know and love, you can get them with different equipment, and it's everybody plays different, and the sound of their fingers on the strings and all that stuff makes a difference. Like, you could play through the exact equipment that your favorite player played, but it might not sound like what you think. And you could play through something else that they never played through, and it might sound even closer to the sound that you were hoping to get. So it's all really weird because it comes down to your own knowledge of what you sound like and how to make things work. And it really, you could use whatever as long as you can make it sound that way, you know? So it's not, I don't get too precious about it has to be exactly this, has to be this cable, it has to be this, what, you know, I can make stuff sound like what I want it to sound like using things that maybe were never used to make that sound. And I've had to do it a lot with trying to recreate my dad's really interesting, strange guitar sounds, you know? So it really just comes down to the more you know about stuff, the more options you have to be able to dial something in, even if you don't have the exact equipment. Because you know, yeah, you could be a purist and say, no, it only can be done this one way. But at the end of the day, if you did a blindfold test and you listened to something, you're not going to know if it was actually the Marshall or if it was the Hendrix PRS or, you know.
Right.
That's true. So what are some of your...
I think we lost a bunch of Super Jets. I like 6 of them.
Okay. Which ones? Go for it.
I don't know. I can't. They're gone now.
Oh, really? I can get them back. I can see them.
There's tons of them.
All right, let me see what I've missed. We've got Brooke Silver, happy 100th, love my show and my Friedman gear. No, that's not it. Sorry.
But at least he's happy.
He's happy.
Okay, yeah. I think I got it now. Maybe. Okay. I think I've got him now. Okay. Make sure I didn't miss. Okay. From Lou Sequoia. Hey, Dweezil, thanks for being here. Can you explain what you're using in Watermelon in Easter Haze Solo when the sound gets fuzzy with some modulation going on?
Sure. So that's a really interesting guitar sound on the record Joe's Garage to begin with. And the clean tone is one of the best clean tones for a lead guitar that I've ever heard. But the specific fuzzy one that you're talking about, my dad had two different amp tones, and one would stay without any modulation and the other one would have modulation on it. So it was envelope modulation too. So depending on how hard he hit it, it would make it go out of tune, it would go sharp, then it would go flat, and then it would settle back in. So you have this kind of thing that's going like this all the time against something that stays stable. And what happens is you get this kind of width and height that happens in the speaker. And there was a thing that he used called the Dynaflanger, which was made by Mic Mix. And it was capable of doing flanging and phasing, but also short delays. And it had an envelope section which could follow the high frequency or the low frequency of what you were playing. And it was, you just had to kind of tweak the sensitivity of it to see how out of tune you wanted it to go. And it depended on the input level of the guitar and the output, of the pickups. Because if you switch from one guitar to another, it might have higher output. It might make it go more out of tune. So it's a tricky unit to use if you're trying to use it with different guitars. Anyway, that particular sound he used a lot on Shut Up and Play Your Guitar. That's the main doubling sound that you hear, but it's used very subtly in the sound for Watermelon and Easter Hay. And it also has a slight bit of a phaser. It's kind of similar to like a phase 90, very slow phase. And that also works with that modulation to give it this kind of interesting sweep feel. And then you add like a little bit of delay to it, and maybe a little bit of reverb, and you just have this really nice spatial, multi-dimensional kind of sound. And I would recreate that inside the Fractal because it's actually pretty easy to do. Well, it took a while to discover how to build it inside the Fractal, but once I did, it was easy to make presets that I could use to have just the right amount of detuning for whichever guitar I was using. So when I was talking about the actual analog unit, you couldn't go from guitar to guitar without it really drastically changing the pitch. But preset by preset in the Fractal, you could. And so that's a really cool thing. But part of one of the secrets to a lot of my dad's guitar sounds, and remember I said he had two DIs mixed with those three amps. He would blend those DIs in. So especially with a Stratocaster, if you have a little bit of clean DI that's compressed and you blend that in with the distorted sound, not to where you really hear the clean sound popping out, but it's just there enough, you get this sense that you can hear all the way around the low strings, the E, A, and D strings. There's this extra dimension because it has such a fast upfront in your face attack, and then the notes kind of come after it, and they're louder, but the initial transient is coming from this cleaner sound. So there's this really interesting blend of all of that stuff, and you can really do that and get the right blend in the Fractal. So it's much harder to blend that kind of sound in an all analog situation. But he used to have, like I said, 5 channels that were creating this 3-dimensional sound. But most people are not going to deal with that. They're happy if they get just a mono sound to sound good.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's cool. That's good that you were able to recreate that with the Fractal instead of.
Yeah, it's very beneficial.
Yeah, having to get all that equipment. So the other one that was missed was Mr. Tinker Train. I can't find it in the super chat, so I can see it here. Who have you jammed with or met that made you starstruck or really blew you away?
Well, the thing is, when I first met Edward Van Halen, I was 12 years old, and he had just showed up at our house because he called our house out of the blue. And that was an amazing thing. There was never going to be anything in my life that was going to match what that experience was, because I had been listening to so much Van Halen and I was so keen on learning how to play guitar. I mean, I'd only been playing guitar for like 6-7 months at the point where he just showed up at our house. So there's never going to be anything that's going to match the excitement level of that, because he was also at that time the most famous guitar player in the world, the most influential guitar player. This was 1982. Mm-hmm. So, but over the years, I've met many amazing musicians and had a chance to play with a lot of musicians that I never would have even imagined that I would play with. Like, I played with Stevie Ray Vaughan one time, and it was me and Stevie Ray Vaughan and Herbie Hancock and some other people. Like, that right there is like this crazy combination. And we played the song Watermelon Man, and Stevie played a borrowed Les Paul and broke 2 strings.
Wow.
So, that was cool. But I've had a chance to play with musicians that I never would have thought I would play with, that weren't guitar players. Like Chick Corea played with us. We did a tour where we played with Return to Forever, and every night Chick Corea would come to the side of the stage. We would play a song of my dad's called King Kong, and he would come over to the side of the stage and he'd look at me and he would do this, meaning, can I come play? So he would ask every night, and he would just say, can I come out and just sit in with you guys? So he started playing on the song. We did a tour that was like 2 months, and he played, I think, at almost every show. Maybe one night he didn't play with us. And the thing is, he's such a skilled player with such a huge vocabulary. Like my dad, he had this amazing vocabulary to play anything and really just color the whole spectrum however he wanted, rhythmically, harmonically. And I did not have the kind of vocabulary to answer what he was saying. So I was put in this position to be like, well, I'm going to have to do something, So a lot of times what I would do, because he would play things that sometimes felt like they were going really outside. And one time he was playing, and it just sounded particularly crazy. I'm like, he is just going out to lunch tonight. I don't know what's going on. And so I just started playing purposely in the wrong key and then bring it back. So it was like I would put my hands in a place that was totally unfamiliar, bring it to a place that's familiar, go unfamiliar. And I was constantly just trying to play in this kind of way where I was like, how can I match the sounds that I'm hearing? Because this stuff is crazy. Come to find out that when he came back to play the main melody, the keyboard he was using had gone completely out of tune. So that's like he was playing all this crazy stuff, and it sounded insane because it was nowhere near in tune. So he's just like, whatever's happening, he's riding the wave. But to me, I was like, man, I can't make that sound. So I literally was just purposely playing in the wrong key and dancing around trying to make stuff happen to make it sound like what I was hearing. So that was kind of a fun thing to experience. But we laughed really hard about it later on, because he was like, yeah, I was trying to find some kind of pitch center and I couldn't, So yeah.
There was another one that we missed. How you doing on time, Dweezil, by the way?
I probably have a few more minutes. I have this food that my wife brought to me, which won't look very appetizing on the, whoops, it'll spill onto my computer as well. But she had just grilled up some of the eggplant from the garden.
Oh, nice.
But it looks all beat to hell, but I'm sure it's going to taste great.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be great.
Cool. Well, we've got a few more questions for you, and then we'll let you run if that's cool.
Sure.
Let's see. This one is for Dave. Congrats on the 100, Dave. Thoughts on high voltage 2 preamp pedals? Synergy should be offered that option. Love Kingsley Simon guest. Not sure what he means.
Not sure. But there might be in something in the future that will address something that you're talking about.
That sounds very specific.
That's really specific. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure he appreciates that specificity.
Yes, I'm sure he does.
Because the tone talk people, they like the guitar nerd stuff like down to the nth degree. So
sometimes you can't say what things in the future holds. You can't.
Yeah.
You can't always.
Let the cat in the bag.
Yeah.
It's true.
More guitars. Great show as always, guys. Dweezil, if you could conjure your own 3-channel amp, what would each channel be based upon? What other features? Boost, noise gate, reverb?
Well, I like fuzz tones, so like a fuzz circuit along with an overdrive thing, so you could cascade some stuff and do some different things. So maybe a built-in fuzz face style channel. But I like also blending clean with distortion, so having a mix facility would be cool. I always thought it'd be cool to have an amp too, where you could have a cabinet that had speakers that were outside of your guitar sound, but the speakers on the outside would be your effects. So you can really have this throw of the effects, but keep your guitar kind of direct in the middle, So I would probably venture to make something that no one else would ever know how to use or buy, and it would be a total flop, but I would love it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Ruben Santiago. Who would you rather jam with, Steven Seagal or Lil Wayne?
I mean, both are amazing on guitar. So I think it really just depends on what kind of song, because I think Lil Wayne really might be, the guy that, he's got the simplicity element going for him, whereas Steven Seagal is very sophisticated and he's very, he's got that vintage tone.
Yeah, that's great. L. Scott Music. Wheresona.com. Oh, this is for the Sona thing.
Okay.
Was a big part of getting the MMA passed. We would love to have you. My friend Shelly Pekin is a founding member. Okay.
I will definitely check it out. Wearesona.com, and I will find out. Songwriters of North America, find out what it's all about.
Cool. Let me get to the rest of these questions quickly for you. I know your dinner's waiting.
Yes.
When we had Steve Lukather on, he was like, "Okay, dinner's here. Got to go. Bye."
Perfect.
That was it. It was gone.
Well, that is the world of Steve Lukather.
Yeah, it was. He gave us his 2 hours, and he was like, "I'm gone." Corey James Guitars, thanks for the super chat. How incredible was Crazy Enough to Sing to You? Please convince Warren to do Tone Talk or anything outside of Rat.
Yeah, it would be great if you guys could have Warren DeMartini on. We worked on that record together, and it was a fun little project. It was right when I had like a little mini project studio together, and neither one of us really knew all that much about all the proper things you need to do to record. It was more like, what happens if you put a mic over here? Okay, that sounds pretty good. Let's leave it. I remember there was one guitar sound that we got that was really cool, where I took this stereo mic, which was a C24, and he had this little Fender Champ, which he used on a lot of the early stuff, even the Out of the Cellar record. He said most of the guitar stuff was that little Fender Champ. Mm-hmm. And but I put the mic above the amp, not behind it, not in front of it, but just above it. And because if you're standing in the room and you're at that height, you're hearing it, and you're like, yeah, there's something about this. Sounds cool right here. So the mic was basically at ear level, and it had this really three-dimensional kind of sound. But it's kind of one of those things where you wouldn't know or think to do that, except for like it just happened to be easy to listen to and see if it sounded good, and it ended up being one of the cooler sounds on the record.
That's cool. Lawrence Christensen, Dweezil and Dave, do you know the details of Ed's guitars he would put 5150 on? I was fortunate to play his tobacco burst.
I know it's a basswood body, that era guitar.
I don't really know the details. No.
They were Kramer bodies and necks at the time. I know it's a basswood body. What pickup was in it, I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of speculation.
There's a lot of speculation on that one.
Some say JB, some go. Eric Fraser, thanks for the super chat. Dweezil, did you ever get to play through Ed's 68 Plexi rig? Love your podcast, Van Halen.
Thanks. Yeah, I did play that amp at 5150 because he played on a record of mine that hasn't come out yet. This record that's called What the Hell Was I Thinking? And it has all these different guitar players. Brian May from Queen, Angus and Malcolm Young, Edwards on there, Eric Johnson, Steve Vai, Brian Setzer, Steve Lukather there. I mean, there's about 45 different players on there, and I'm still waiting to try to get. I'd love to get Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck and Mark Knopfler and Pete Townsend and all these different guys, because what it is, it's an audio movie and it changes. It's like if you were listening to a radio station and you kept turning the dial to see what else was on. That's what happens with the music. It's constantly changing, and then these different guitar players start jumping out of the speakers. And the music is all different styles all the time, but it's all guitar, bass, and drums. And you're hearing guitars do things that really they haven't done before. Like I did a section that sounds like bagpipes, but it's all guitars. And yeah, when he played on that record, we had the original amp, and he was using that honey-colored original Ernie Ball guitar at that time. That's what he played on, but through that amp. And it sounded amazing, and it was easy to play. People say, oh, was it easy? It's got that spongy kind of compression thing, so it had plenty gain, more than enough. But the fun part about that moment of playing it was he was playing. We had put together this thing where we did a greatest hits Edward Van Halen guitar solo. We thought that would be funny, where it was like, let's take all of your most well-known licks and some of the ones people don't know as well, put them in one solo. And it's so we would say, okay, play the one from Push Comes to Shove, or play this. And sometimes he would say, I don't remember that one. I said, it goes like this. And I would play it, and he goes, well, why don't you fucking play it? You just sound like me anyway.
That sounds like him.
Yeah. So it was fun, you know. It was one of the most fun times I ever had in the studio. But that was also a total flip of the switch, because the first thing I ever recorded, he produced. He and Don Landy, I made a song called My Mother's a Space Cadet. And I was 12 years old, playing guitar, maybe 9 months at that point. And I didn't know anything about overdubs or recording or whatever, but he had to show me how to do punch-ins and how you're supposed to play along with the track before you punch in. And so he sat there and he punched me in. At 5150, I was telling him what to play, and I would punch him in. So it was like
full circle.
Yeah.
It came
was really cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
That's cool.
We do have a few more questions. Is it cool, Dweezil? Are you good?
I got time for a couple more.
Okay. You tell us when
two
you
more. That's it. Two more.
Yeah, all right, we'll do two more, and then Dave and I'll stay on, and we'll cover what else is left. All right. Peter Lasis, thanks for the super chat. Dweezil Zappa, Confessions is one of my favorite records. I think you were playing that single pickup Steinberger you recently sold on that record. Is that correct? What about
that is correct.
What about amps and cabs? Great tones and guitar company on that LP.
Thanks. I had a boogie amp. It was not a rectifier. It was before that. It was one of those Mark III. It had the graphic EQ on it and stuff.
2 or 3.
Had the push pull.
That would be a 2 or 3.
Yeah, I think.
What year was that?
Well, I had the amp since 1984, and
probably a 2C then.
I feel like it was a 2. Yeah, 2 or 2C maybe, but the record was recorded in 1991, I think. Okay. So, but yeah, that was what I was using at that time.
Cool. All right, last question for you. From Rummy. Thanks for the super chat. Dweezil, please share some musical and tonal ideas you learned from Warren DeMartini. By the way, love the EVH podcast.
Thanks, Warren DeMartini, getting some shout outs tonight. Warren is one of the best players, great style, always had a good tone, and most of the tone is in his hands.
Mhm.
He's not a guy that uses a lot of effects. So I love the picking attack that he has, because there's a lot of dynamics in the way that he plays. But tonally, he's a guy that's just going to plug pretty much straight into a Marshall style amp and sound amazing. But I don't think that we ever talked that much about specific guitar sounds or how to get specific guitar sounds. We just talked more about playing, and he had a really great way of using triplets and rolling them over the bar line. I loved that about his playing, and I loved the bluesy element, because he more than a lot of players of that era had the ability to improvise and play with feel and have this thing. It could be different, and he would go for stuff, and a note might not ring out, but it didn't matter. He just still would go with the thing, and he just had an approach that he liked the improvisational element more than some other guitar players who had a lot of really specifically worked out stuff. And I'm sure he worked out certain things, but I know that he was a good improvisational player. And that's one of the things that I always loved about his playing in general.
Yeah, he's a great player. Just
Yeah.
awesome player. I've gone back recently and listened to the first couple of Rat albums. It was just so good. The tone was great.
Yeah, the You're in Trouble solo was always super cool, because he had some kind of oddball note choices in there, and that little pinky slide thing that he would do. Him and George Lynch had that kind of
that little
slidey
slippery
vibrato too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, hey,
Yeah.
I really want to thank you, Dweezil, for coming on.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to meet you and to talk with you for over an hour and a half. Make sure everybody checks out the Running with the Dweezil podcast.
Yeah,
I'll put a link
on
into
DweezilZappa.com. That's the place to find it. And also Reward Music, if they are looking for a way to put all their stuff in one place and try to make it easier for their audience to find them. And it's, the thing about something like that kind of platform is, as you guys know, if you're going to do a show like this, you have a location where people can find it, but you go other places to help promote it. You go on social media and you do whatever you can, and you spread the word, and it gets out to whatever you're going to get to, right?
Right.
No different with having your stuff on your own website and saying, hey, everybody, use your social media and say, hey, I've got all this exclusive content that you're not going to see on social media, because I'm going to give you the best stuff. I'm going to put it here. So come check it out here. Let's have this direct relationship and build that core foundation. And, it's a simple concept. It's not always the easiest thing to do, because people start feeling like, oh, but I'm going to miss out if I don't just stay on my Instagram and I do this and I do that. You can use that stuff, but just tell people to go to your website directly to help you out and support you directly, and create that relationship right there. Because if you're doing everything just with social media, you don't have the benefit of the emails or the direct way to contact those people. But the social media platforms do. And what they do also is they say, oh, you have 100,000 followers? Great. We only let you reach 5,000 of them. And if you want to reach the rest of them, you have to buy ads. And we'll unlock a little by little by little. And you don't know if you ever reach them, but you're the one that brought those people there to begin with. They got all those names to make all that money off of and all that stuff. So it's a little bit maddening. Artists have always had people reaching into their pockets and making things difficult for them. But if you are wanting to do something to build an audience and a direct relationship with people, you can start to do that and not have to have so many people reaching into your the core of your business. And the thing about Reward Music is any sale that you make, you keep 100%. Reward Music is just a platform that will help you put your stuff up online, and you use it however you want to use it, but you are just paying for the bandwidth of the content that you're putting up there, and it only starts at $20 a month. So it's a very simple way to get your stuff in one place, affordable way to get it there to begin with, and then you get to sell everything and keep everything that you make. So whatever relationships you have, business partners, obviously you maintain those relationships, but still, like, Reward Music doesn't touch any of your sales or anything. And Reward Music can make all your merchandise as far as t-shirts and all that stuff and ship it anywhere in the world. And if you buy a t-shirt from there, you get the tracking directly from the artist's website that says where it is and when it's going to get there. All that stuff, it's all self-contained. It's a crazy powerful system, and it's there to be used for artists to do whatever they want to do with it.
That's a great idea.
Great.
Yeah. Well,
Check it out.
People should definitely check it out. I'll put a link in the description about it as well. Dave, can you stay on for a few more minutes and answer a few more questions?
That's fine.
All right, cool.
Cool, guys.
Dweezil,
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really
All right.
appreciate it.
Well, sorry I couldn't stay for the rest of it, but I have to have the food my wife made for me before it's too terribly cold. And I appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
thank
absolutely.
you. Really appreciate it. We got
Thank
to
you.
most of the questions. So
Okay, great. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks
Awesome.
everybody who sent in the questions and stuff. And see you guys later date.
Awesome.
take care,
Thanks,
man.
guys.
Yeah.
Thanks. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Cool. That was great to have him on there.
Oh, I'm happy. Something with his mic setup was hissing the whole time.
Really?
Oh yeah, the whole entire time he was on,
See,
like really bad.
my tinnitus, I can't hear shit. So
Yeah, no, like I'm just it's sitting right next to my speaker, and I'm hearing, and now he's gone, and it's completely quiet.
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
You'll probably hear it on the
replay? I
yeah.
wonder if people heard it. Wow.
I don't know.
Matt White, Dave, can you spill the beans about the Friedman Vox you're putting out, features, and when to be expected to be out?
No idea when yet. We're not even remotely close yet. I mean, it'll be a straight up Vox amp, top boost channel, and a normal channel, essentially, of a Vox AC30. Probably have a half power switch also. Straight up cloned to my vintage Vox AC30 I own.
Is that the one that was in your studio right there? Or
Yeah.
No? Corey Johnson, thanks for the super chat. Dave, you mentioned that you would recommend modding the Marshall SV20 straight away. What improvements would you make? Thanks, great show.
Well, I don't know. Well, it depends. Yeah, do you want it to operate like a stock non-master volume amp? If so, I find those to be just ever so slightly harsh. So I would do a couple things to improve upon that kind of smooth out the top end on them a little bit, to make them sound more like an older one. If you wanted it something else, well, you can do anything to it. I mean, I've modded them to have BE style channels or gain masters, different things. So
Okay.
I don't know. It depends.
Yeah, I guess. So they should contact you.
Yeah, sure. I can tell you this much. I'm completely backed up on mods right now. It looks like a Marshall graveyard around here. I mean, like, so someone walked in and just looked around and just said, "Holy crap!" There's like carcasses everywhere.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I think I can answer this question. Dave, Ed had 5150 on certain guitars. Do you know why he liked those certain guitars? He only put 5150 on 2 guitars.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
He had 5150 on the actual 5150, which I have the replica right here. Jeez, I can't point. Right. So
yeah.
that, and that was a Kramer. and he liked that guitar. And then the other one was the original, I believe it was the Ernie Ball, or was it the Peavey, the amber one that he had, the 51, small little 5150 letters.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one.
Yep. Other than that, I think just because he liked naming.
Well, he started using those guitars on 1984 too, didn't he? Yes.
Yeah, and the 84
and then
tour. Yep.
And wasn't there one that had a 1984 across it too?
Yep. Yeah, that's the
There
one.
was a whole bunch of those guitars on that tour.
Wolfgang got that guitar, I think, as a gift from Ed.
Yeah.
One year he said on Howard Stern, the 1984.
I mean, I think they're all basically the same. They were the same necks and bodies that he got from Kramer, and they were the basswood bodies. I know that much.
Okay.
Different tone.
Yep. Let's see. Any other questions that I'm missing here on the super chats? I know there are. Yes. Here we go. Dave, any chance in making a JTM 50 from Lou Sequoia? Thanks, Lou.
I mean, I'm not going to make it as a product line. If you want a replica of something like that, there's another builder out there called Dr. Dan Amps, and does some great Marshall repros, great hand-built stuff. So, I mean, if you wanted like something like that, I would recommend him.
That's cool. Isn't Germino still around too? They make them too.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, Germino would be a good choice also. I don't know if he makes that specific thing, but
yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
This is an interesting. Joe Alba, no disrespect intended, Dave, but what would your Vox do above what Morgan's Vox clones do?
I'm just going to say that mine will be clones of my Vox.
So your sound, the sound that you
so in other words, I'm going to do everything in my power to make it sound exactly like a vintage copper top Vox. I think Joe's is a different take on it. I don't think it's, to me, it doesn't sound as traditional AC30 as a real AC30. Like if you compared the two.
Okay. I haven't done
his take on it.
Right. Okay. Vibhas Patil. Thank you so much. Question about patch cables. What's Dave's pick between the Mogami 2314 and 2319? And have you tried Bestronix owned 0678 patch cables? Man, this is real going down deep.
Generally I use the 2314 if it's the Mogami. It's a little easier to work with for the small square plug ends that we use than the 2319 is. I don't have an overwhelming preference between those two though. But the 2314 is a little smaller, a little easier to deal with. The Bestronix, we started using some of those. I'm assuming that's the thinner of the two that they make. I can't remember. I have some here that we used a bunch of recently, and that was quite good. A little harder to work with because it has a braided shield on it. I think both are great. I kind of like the feel of the Bestronix. It seems a little more durable, maybe.
Okay.
So there.
Cool.
That's my 2 cents on that one.
And what about SP400 plugs?
What about them? The SP400 plugs are great. I use those for everything we do now.
Okay. Cool.
That's the square plugs.
Joe Robinson sent a chat. Okay. Dave and Mark, great show. Thoughts on Frank Zappa's music and guitar tone? Any favorite song or album?
To be honest, I totally respect Frank Zappa. I'm actually not really that big of a fan. So, but I totally respect what he did and where he came from, and the crazy musicians that played with him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't own one Frank Zappa album, so I can't say like I'm a fan of Frank Zappa. But ironically, it was my first concert that I went to, but I think that was just because my aunt and uncle somehow got us tickets. Um, I think he's a genius on the guitar. I mean, just amazing at what he did.
Yeah.
As far as his tone, it's not something I'd have to go back and listen and see. I can't remember. But I will tell you, I saw Dweezil play Zappa. I think once, and it was phenomenal. I mean, his tone on that stuff was great. So, and just it was mind blowing, just some of the music. So that was, and you know what it is? I think live, it's more impressive than just listening to an album, some Frank Zappa stuff.
Yeah, I've actually heard when Dweezil was doing some of that stuff rehearsing, because the person that works with me played with Dweezil for all those early Zappa to Zappa tours, back around 2012-ish, and yeah, so I got to hear some of that stuff. It was crazy stuff. Hard.
Oh yeah, try learning that shit. Joe Robinson, thanks for the super chat. I don't know if you asked a question. If you did, maybe BB can.
You got a couple other questions in here too. Kale Joe, I guess it's Kale Joe. Dave, which do you prefer, the Lexicon PCM 42 or the Roland SDE 3000? Man, that's tough. Can I say both? They're different. The Lexicon 42 has a very ambient 3-dimensional quality to it. It almost sounds like there's reverb on it with it. It's not just like a 1-dimensional delay repeat. It's very expansive. It almost sounds like reverb's on. The 3000, a little less of that, but the 3000 has its own little character too. That's cool. So both. Good luck finding either these days. Prices on SDEs now are around $700, and 42s I can't even find them to price them.
Wow. I grabbed that one right before
the price increase.
Right before the price increase.
Yeah, I'm going to be selling I have a Yamaha D1500, and several of them actually. They're amazing delays that were widely used, and they used to be $150 piece ish. 150 to $200 is what they used to go for. But I can't even do any comparisons right now because I can't find any. I don't know what the price is. I'm thinking it's around 500 now.
Wow.
So
everything's shot up.
Yeah. So I will actually be posting that on my Facebook sometime soon. I have several of them actually.
Wow. Keep an eye out, guys.
Yeah, keep an eye on my Facebook, because I'm going to be liquidating all sorts of crap. So I'm going to put it on Facebook first and at least give someone a shot at it before I reverb the stuff. Cool. There's all sorts of pedals and all sorts of stuff that I've had for a long time that I just don't use.
Right.
I mean, it just sits, and I'm just like, I want to turn that money into some investment or something,
Yeah, why not? If it's just sitting there, Ryan Reeves, thank you for the super chat. Hey guys, great show. You should try to get Tom Anderson on sometime. I actually have talked to Tom Anderson twice. It's been a long time, but I talked to him at NAMM. He really wasn't interested. I think he likes keeping himself low key. But I'm happy to reach out to him again because I know he makes great products.
Absolutely.
Andrew Paul, hey Dave, what are some tips when trying to find a vintage Marshall? Years, things to avoid, price?
What do you want this Marshall to do? That's the key. I mean, if you're looking for a non-master volume vintage Marshall, I mean, you probably want something 72 or earlier. Maybe 73, as long as it still has a turret board and not a circuit board. That was a transition year. I'm not saying that you can't get some decent sounds out of some of the circuit board years, which are preceding, but I would stay, if you're going to spend the money, I would stay with the older. Ideally plexis are nice, but it just depends if you want a 50 or 100. And there's going to be a really cool amp that I'm going to put up for sale for someone. That's a 50 watt plexi. It's going to be expensive, but it's a 50 watt plexi. That's a transitional year. So it was right on the transition from the JTM 45 to the 50. So it literally has some characteristics like the filtering of a JTM 45, but no tube rectifier. So it's an interesting transition year. And at one point in time, this particular amp had its output transformer replaced, but replaced back in the 60s. And it was with this transformer I've seen before. It's a diagonal version of the output transformers at the time. I had a 100 watt too that we used in that EVH video I did with Pete Thorne that had the same diagonal output transformer. This is a 50 watt version of it. So it was, I was replaced in the 60s, or 68-ish, 69-ish. And I've seen it in a few. I think they used it as replacements at the time.
Okay.
So, of course, it's going to be $7,000 for the amp, but
wow. This was Joe's question from his earlier super chat. What are your thoughts on Ty Tabor's King's X Lab Series sound? I know you love that.
It's fucking, yeah, it's awesome. It's great. But I mean, you got to have the whole thing, the preamp, from the Fender Elite guitar, and the MIDI verb. It's all like kind of, it all kind of goes together, but it's a great sound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Joe's Garage, I understand, is that's the album to get from Zappa.
Yeah,
if you're gonna get it, like Zappa 101, go by Joe's Garage. I remember that. Let's see. Okay.
Oh, good, John. Here's one at another super chat. Super Chicks.
Oh, okay, I see it. Hey guys, hope all is well. Get Johan Segborn on your show if you can. Check out his channel if you haven't. Cheers and have a great weekend.
Love to.
I'd love to have him on. I should reach out to his channel and see if we can get him on.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, he is a mad scientist.
Yeah, totally. I love his videos.
Yeah, great stuff. The one he just did recently where he stuffed the cabinets with the 4x12s with, he like filled 4x12 with like blankets and everything, just completely filled it, and wanted to hear what it sounded like compared to a cab without it.
Yeah.
And like a regular and it was interesting to hear the difference of a cab that was completely stuffed.
Yeah.
I think we talked about that, and you mentioned something like Bogner does that with his cabs or something like that.
They don't completely stuff it, but there is a batting on the back of the 4x12. To me, the batting makes it sound a little dry, a little dead.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of sustain in the notes.
Yeah, and it seemed it seems to cause that.
Okay, cool. Slake, thanks for the super chat. Hi, Mark and Dave. Love the show. Dave, is it possible to put in an order for a Naked Mark II with you? Lead time doesn't matter. Thank you.
Well, here's what I can tell you. Please email me, and I can put you on a list. I'm over the amount of amps that I'm gonna make on that list, but I don't anticipate that everyone that's actually on this list will take one. So there might be openings. if I ever can get to building them, which I plan on.
Okay. Joe, I got your question. So we talked about that. I think John oh, here it is. Got it. Dave, I got my BE 100 Deluxe set to your Plexi settings. Absolute killer. I have a Buxom, but looking for an OD suggestions for leads and a bit more. I think it maybe means a Buxom Boost.
Well, what's wrong with the Buxom Boost? Or what's wrong with the HBE channel on the amp that has more gain? Yeah. Why don't you use the other channel?
Okay, so set your Plexi settings. Yeah. I mean, you should have a much more gain than the BE 100 Deluxe, my opinion.
Yeah.
Tons of gain.
But the Buxom Boost, if that's what you have, is great.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
That should tighten the crap out of everything. And
yeah.
Okay. We got Super Chick's question. We got Slake's question. Wait, did I get that? Yes, the naked order. I think I got everything. But we can go to other questions that weren't super chats if you want to.
I was just trying to look at some here.
Gear Boy, Dave, in the last 5 years, what amps other than your own did you hear that you liked? I guess he means like what brands?
Oh, I mean, the new Soldanos are nice. There's some Tone King amps that have come out that are great. There's that's a good question. Hang on, I might think of something. Yeah, that have come out in recent times. I mean, to me, not really. There hasn't been that much that has. The last version of the Fryette Deliverance, the newer version of it, I heard not that long ago. That was just great sounding. Mm-hmm. The Sound City amps by Fryette were great. If you want more of a high watt kind of thing. I mean, it's hard to. Yeah, newer. That's things I can think of off the top of my head right now. I might be totally forgetting something, but
okay. Yeah. Once production gets back going, I may have to get myself a Soldano 30. Just like I literally since NAMM a couple years ago, that's all I've been thinking about. Like I got to get one of those.
Well, we can talk about that.
Yeah, I'll get it one day. Let's see. I'm just going through questions here.
Here's one, Dave. So from Cecil Music. Dave, what's your thoughts on front-loaded cabs? Do they sound different? Yes, they sound different. I don't know if I've ever been able to tell you. I can't tell you what the difference is. I don't think I've ever done this experiment really. I've always used rear-loaded cabinets because I was always trying to kind of emulate the original, Marshall cab kind of scenario, which was a happy accident years ago for Marshall, but it was a good accident. So I don't know. Good question. I should do that experiment one day if I ever get the time. I don't think I'm going to get the time though. I never have the time.
Yeah, right.
I mean, my weeks, they just run out of time. I mean, I just I need a 48-hour day right. to accomplish everything I can try to get accomplished. Like I said, with the mods right now and things, it's just crazy.
Right. And then the move and everything.
Well, not even that. It's also I'm doing like repairs and things with the disruption at the factory and everything. I'm doing, repair jobs, a lot of repair jobs too. So,
Gotcha. Scott Brockway, I take it Mark Fauner fell through. No, he hasn't fallen through. I could still schedule him. Just didn't work out. We were trying to get the 100th show scheduled, and trying to work that out. And yeah, I'm glad that that's over. But so it took some time to figure out like who we were going to book for the 100th show, and then that didn't work out, and so I kind of put some guests on hold. So yeah, Mark Farner will hopefully still be on the list to come through on there.
So people are asking about this iconic EVH amp.
Sure, let's talk about it.
The answer is I don't know. I mean, obviously some of it has to be solid state. I don't know what exactly, but with two 12AX7s, it's not all two. So how they're doing that, what the two 12AX7s are for that are in there, I'm not sure. But I can tell you that James Brown is very good at mimicking awesome sounding distortion circuits, solid state. I mean, like his amp tweaker pedals were awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think it's their foray into trying to make a slightly more budget amp version. I don't think they're looking to be exactly like the Peavey, although it does look like it.
I'd love to get James on the show. I'm sure. I used to try to get Howard Kaplan on the show, and he would tell me that, Fender wouldn't really allow him to come on the show. So it'd be interesting if James would be allowed. But knowing James, I mean, he developed the original 5150. So,
yeah.
He's got the ear. I'm sure he's going to develop something that sounds good. And like you said, it's more of it's a kind of like an entry level price for someone who's going to get into like tube amps.
Yeah, I just don't know. I don't know if they used a solid state driver stage to drive the power section, and maybe they're using the preamp tubes for the gain stages, because 4 stages would be enough to basically do, because the last 5th stage in a 5150 isn't really doing anything gain wise. So might be enough.
We'll see.
I have to look at that again. I'm not sure.
Did we get this question, Dave? Pete Lasis, other than the front or rear loaded, how do your Friedman cabs differ from the Soldano cabs?
Soldano cabs are made from a thicker ply. The Soldano cab is generally speaking, it was a 3/4 inch ply. Although the new ones, they might have played around with that a little bit. I can't remember exactly. The Soldano cab's a little stiffer.
Okay. I learn Winder. Thank you, Dave. Tone Talk is so inspirational. Oh, that's so nice of you to say. Yeah, James was already on the show. As a matter of fact, someone mentioned online on Facebook that James described a hybrid solid state tube amp on our show at some point. It was something that he was working on.
Well, maybe that's it.
So I have to go back. I'd see what that was, but yeah. Dave or Mark, what are your opinions on the difference between the TC Electronics 1210 chorus and the tri-stereo chorus? I have not tried them, so I don't know.
Okay. Totally different. The tri-stereo kind of is better at a kind of more wobbly chorus, so to speak. Has a little more wobble to it, like a little more vibrato-y, where you can hear the speed. It's generally set a little faster. The 1210 is just a thick, gooey analog chorus that's just very wide sounding. They're both really good. They're definitely different in tone, though.
Cool. Islander Winder question was answered. Awesome. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Awesome.
Super chat. L. Scott Music. Dave, you use 1/2-inch Baltic on your cabs then?
No, 5/8. The traditional Marshall.
Okay. Guys, what's your favorite version of the PV 5150? Well, there's really no difference between the block letter and the signature. James said that. So
Yeah, I mean, essentially the original 51. Well, there's the 5150, and then the second version of it with the full clean, which is different. Other than that, though, I mean, the 6505 is the same amp, also, that they still make to this day. So, I think they're still making it.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much EVH, the iconic 5150, is going after that market.
Yeah,
65.
Well, I think it's actually coming in at I mean, I don't know how much a 6505 is now. Maybe it's still cheap. Not sure.
Well, they're made overseas. I know that.
Yeah.
So John Simmons,
which really isn't too much of a problem. I mean, if you've ever looked in an original PV, it's not the the original PV that was made here wasn't anything to write home about. They always seem to work, but I mean, it was cheap, flimsy, single-sided PC boards that flexed like mad. It wasn't. I mean, it was made to be made cheap. So,
right. I mean, they were trying to maximize as much profit as possible.
Yeah. So I can't imagine, if it was made overseas now, it wouldn't. I mean, I don't know about the transformers, if what's different about those, or if they're the same.
Yeah. So regarding the iconic, it's a hybrid amp. We don't know for sure, but we assume so. Let's see. Gavin T, thanks. Is it common to overheat amps with a load and wall voltage can peak at 125? I have brown box now. Hopefully that solves it. That should definitely solve it.
Well, I mean, overheat amps with a load. I mean, the load isn't going to cause the amp to necessarily overheat more than a speaker cabinet, or it shouldn't. There's just the fact that you might be pushing the amp harder than you normally would if you were just playing out of a speaker cabinet. So you might have a tendency to push this amp to 10 or up to 10, which you're running the amp a lot harder and a lot hotter than. 125 can be an issue. That's hot. So definitely knock that down to more like at least like 117-ish area. Yeah, that's a lot less stress on your amp. Maybe even 115.
That's what I have mine at.
Yeah. There's a sweet spot there. Like if you notice, like if you set, I don't know if you played with it, Mark, but there's a little spot that it kind of gets a little nice and sweet, I
haven't played with it. I just kind of set it, but yeah.
If you set it at 120 and listen to it, and then you just move it down some, you'll hear what it does.
Right. Yeah, I'll mess with it. There was a question here. No, that's not it. It was Gonzalo Cordova's. You're late, buddy. Dweezil was here for almost an hour and a half. So just rewind. Peter Lay says, people talk about rack chorus all the time, but what about the TCSCF? Other than Eric Johnson, I never hear about them. Thoughts?
Yeah, they were great. Now, the original version of it, I think, sounded better than the later versions of it. So original versions would be the all black ones. The later ones went to surface mount, and it had like a purple, I think a purple color, if I recall correctly, on it. Those didn't quite sound as good. The early ones are richer. They're full-size parts. It just sounds a little richer and nicer. But cool.
Hey, Stan, Dweezil was here for an hour and a half. We're just finishing up the show. with any remaining questions, so you'll have to rewind. Yeah, someone wrote, he's eating eggplant. That is what Dweezil's doing right now. I think that's it. I'm sure that there were some other questions that we missed, but
I'm just trying to glance here. Oh, here's one interesting one.
okay.
Dave, what's going on with Mark Cameron? Is it a totally dead company? Well, what is he doing? Did you like his mods? You know what? Frankly, I mean, it's probably a total dead company, I would think. Where Mark is now, I'm not exactly sure. I think he's closer up in the north in California now. What's he doing exactly? I have no idea. I mean, I wish him the very best. I hope he's doing okay. But yeah, I don't really know. Did I like his mods? Yeah, his mods were great. Sure. He had good sounding amps. If you could, if you can get your amp,
Yeah. Or you can go to Alex King. He's got about like 10
he's got them all.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've always heard good things. I mean, I got I borrowed it from Michael Torin, a Camarock module from Salvation Audio.
Yeah,
that's great. Sounds great. So, I do have some interesting news that I got. I told that to you earlier, Dave, about Dean DeLeo.
Oh yeah.
So Tom Bukovac hooked us up. So hopefully we'll get Dean on the show. That would be cool.
Yep, not confirmed yet, but we're gonna reach out.
Yeah, hopefully that would be great. But our next guests are the 24th, so that's a Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, with two notes. So we'll have Guillaume and Justin from Two Notes On, and we'll be talking. And I don't know if this is going to happen. I'm going to spill the beans. We may have a couple of special guests who may join with us.
Okay.
Do you want me to say who?
I have no idea.
They've been previous guests of our show.
Oh.
And they just came out with the new cabs.
Phil X. That must be George Lynch
and Phil X. So Justin is talking with both of them to see if maybe they'll make an appearance on the show to talk about their specific cab modules and stuff like that.
Cool. I didn't know Phil did a cab pack.
Yeah, he did it of his cabs too.
Well, I hope to offer a cab pack shortly also.
Awesome.
So that's in the talks, or in the works, shall we say.
Stay curious. Sorry I missed your question before. I passed it and then I meant to come back. Thoughts on the 1980s Fernandez function guitars, decent or crap?
I don't even know what the function guitars are, so
me either. I know that the early 80s Fernandez had like the very first versions of the Floyds on them overseas, so those go for a pretty penny if you can get an old Fernandez Floyd. But I don't know anything about the function guitars.
I don't either. Now I got to look it up.
Yeah. Stan Adams says, I don't think I'll ever get rid of my original PV 5150. It's still my favorite. I don't play death metal. It's still great for what it's designed for. It's
a good sounding amp.
It's a good sounding amp. Totally.
There's nothing wrong with it.
I had a 5150 combo that I sold just before.
Heaviest amp ever.
Oh, it was ridiculous. It didn't sound like the head. It definitely was a different sounding animal. But I sold it locally for like $450, and now you can't even buy them for less than like $1,200. Like it's crazy. Everything Ed related has gone up. Okay, one last question. Was the smoke really so bad that boxes had to go? I guess not a nice barbecue smell. Yeah, there were a lot of people who wrote on the last show. They were like, "Oh, you should have sold the Tolex, or you should have sold amps without head shells." And I mean, that's crazy.
It creates a liability issue down the road. No, sorry. Yeah, they had to go.
Had to go. All right. Any other questions, David? You see?
No, not really.
Oh, just one more from Super Chicks. Dave, I love my twin sister combo. It makes me so happy. Inspirational play. Sushi on me when I make it to LA. Matsuhisha. Hisa? I can't say.
I'll take you up on that. When you coming? Let me know.
Email them. All right, cool. Well, guys, check us out on the 24th. Make sure you hit subscribe. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter. Just look up Tone Talk. Also, make sure you go to Sweetwater. I did not even mention them our entire show. You can get Universal Audio stuff at Sweetwater. I'm going to put a couple links in there. They're still running some specials on their plugins for UA plugins. So just check out the Sweetwater link. I'm going to put like 3 more banners on. It'll just start looking like CNN over here.
Well, you know.
Anyway, that's it. Hope you guys have a great weekend.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to go to the bathroom now. After 2 hours and 20 minutes of just sitting here. Everybody have a great weekend.
See you later,
hang on
guys.
1 second.
Okay.
Bye, guys.